for a time developing a product that was used in the underbridge utility market space and built all of the equipment that made those elements. And watching that was a really fascinating thing. He's also a writer, an avid sports enthusiast, has a great track record in track and field, was a Division I athlete. And Chuck, you will have some things in common with Art. He's from Ohio as well. But I look forward to having him share something that has been very valuable internal to us, and that I think we have lots of people on our team and in jobs that Art and I have worked on together in the past that often come out of the gate thinking that they don't have a creative bone in their body. And lots of folks who work in accounting, legal, finance worlds that think that creativity doesn't have a real place in business. Art has really found a way to take the personality types of people from all different industries and help them to find their way onto the team in a way that makes it incredibly effective. So I'm looking forward to seeing Art's presentation again. I learn something new every time I go through it. And with that, Art, I'm going to turn the show over to you. And if you haven't taken the assessment yet, the personality assessment is in the link in the chat. It will take you 3 to 5 minutes to go through it. Don't spend a lot of time thinking about it. Just answer the questions. And at the end, you'll come to understand what your personality type is, and it will make everything that Art will be teaching today sort of fit into place into the puzzle. So Art.
Okay, thanks, Dee.
Sure.
Let me get things started. Share, play. All right. Everybody can see that, right? Okay. So creativity, it is super important. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about creativity, but I think if you call creativity innovation, most business people can get behind that, because all businesses want to innovate. Whether it's to do something new or it's to solve existing challenges, innovation is essential. And you don't really have innovation unless you have creativity. The problem is, like Dee mentioned, most people don't think they're creative. And what I found in my years of marketing and sitting around the table with broad groups of people is that most people are creative. As a matter of fact, everybody's creative. They're just different in how they create. So that's where the creative personalities that we're going to get into a little bit later. But I'm going to go ahead and start. So CREATIVIZE is the name of the presentation, and it's to help you become more creative. So most people are like this guy who is looking pensive off into the distance and feels like he is not creative. But we all are enthusiastic like this woman and agree that we want to be more creative. Can I get a thumbs up from somebody on that if you really want to be creative? Okay. And I'm sure there's people in this workshop that have said, I'm not creative, because they think being creative means being an artist, that you have to draw or sing or play music or something like that. Those are talents. My lights are on timer, so if you see me reach up to do that, it's because I got to turn my lights back on. Those are talents, not creativity. By nature, we all create. That's what we do. We create our own identities, we create experiences, we create relationships. Thousands of times a day, we use our minds to make decisions and to solve problems and to do different things. So in that, we are creative. And there's different levels. On the surface, there's solutions, innovations, communication. Below that, things like storytelling. And then a little bit below that, there's things like our sense of humor. And then in our core, we get to create who we are, who our identity is, and we can make those decisions. Now, there's 3 parts to creativity. The part that you're born with, then there's the skill set that I'm going to help you with, and then also the mindset. So those 3 things together help influence your creativity. Can't help you with how much you were born with, but in this workshop, we'll talk about the skill set and we'll talk about the mindset. What is creativity? Creativity is the ability to produce unique and useful solutions to a problem. Here we see, oh snap, my tacos keep falling over. Bam, I've got a little green plastic truck that I can set my tacos in. Sometimes creativity is just that simple. Does anybody know another solution for tippy tacos that's out there in the marketplace? Has anyone seen like the flat bottom tacos?
Flat bottom ones, yeah.
Yeah, right. Where were those years ago? Those are so brilliant. I personally, that's all I'm buying from here out, you know, is the flat bottom tacos. So the end product of creativity, what is it that we're going after? We're going after a solution. And you're like, but Art, what about ideas? Aren't you trying to be creative so you can come up with ideas? Well, that's part of it. That's part of the process. So a solution is a fully realized and validated idea, right? So what are some of the types of problems you create solutions for? In your roles as COOs, if someone briefly wants to chime in and let me know some of the things that you're always trying to solve.
How to get printed materials out all over the nation.
Okay.
I'm not sure if you can see the chat, Art, but a few things are coming through chat. Labor shortages.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I am. Just go ahead and chime in. I'm not.
Yeah, I figured it might be blocked behind your presentation.
It is. Yeah. Oh, wait a minute. If I chat. Okay, there we go.
Got it? Okay.
Yeah, I got it. Although it's over my presentation now, so that's.
Labor shortages, mitigating risk, staff retention.
Okay.
Engagement through remote work.
I'm sorry for when I opened the chat, my cursor disappeared. So now I'm trying to close the little chat window blindly.
So trying to figure out how to manage the back to the office plans that we had in view of the resurgence of the variant in COVID. It's a big one.
Okay. Let's get two more.
We're trying to figure out how to change our workday implementation for an alternative practice structure that we've been setting up.
Okay. I mean, and let's get one more and then we'll move on. Oh, there we go. I got it away.
So we're trying to work through a new delivery channel. And so how do we go to market different and deliver our services differently?
Okay. And what I hear is, I mean, these are some complex things, right? There are a lot of moving parts. There's resources, there's time, there's a lot of different factors. So along the way, it may be one problem, but it's actually, if you break it apart, it's 10 problems that you all need to solve for, and they are all sort of interdependent. So you can see that coming up with something creative is really, really important, because there's a lot of times you can come up with a solution, but you have to make these big compromises. And I think that's where innovation comes in, and you can think, if we just do this, we don't have to sacrifice, that. So that's where it's so important. So a creative is one who creates. Thumbs up if you consider yourself a creative. Okay. Well, the truth is, because we all solve problems all the time, we are all creatives. So thanks, Billy D. I appreciate that. Now let's understand our creative personalities. This is where it's going to be fun. And you guys have all done the survey, right? Everybody? Okay, cool. All right. So in the personality, what makes up the creative personality, there's three parts, or the creative identity rather. There's your accuracy, your range, and your personality. Accuracy, range, personality. Remember that for the quiz at the end. That makes your creative identity. So creative accuracy, how many ideas you produce before you're on target. Fred's ideas are on point. Get it on point. So some creatives need to produce a lot of ideas before they can produce one viable idea. But with more confidence and skill, creatives can produce viable ideas with less effort. So sometimes you can be in a brainstorming or problem-solving meeting, and there's somebody just throwing all kinds of stuff out, and it's not even in the ballpark. But then there's those people that just kind of sit back and think, and they drop 3 things and all of them are good. That's just the difference in creative accuracy. And I think knowing that you may be the type of person that needs to throw out 20 things to find 3 good will make you feel okay if your ideas aren't really hitting like the person next to you who just seems to nail it every time they open their mouth. So creative range, how far your ideas venture from the obvious. To me, that doesn't look like a shoe, but someone had the vision to make a shoe that's part shoe, part octopus. That's out of the box. We love using that term. Oh, Julie is so out of the box, or Fred's ideas are so out of the box. That's how far from just your basic, straightforward solution your ideas come. So your accuracy is 1, and then there's your range. We're going to do a quick drill. What words would describe a slug? And I'm not messing with that chat again because it makes my cursor disappear. So if someone just wants to unmute and say a word, that'd be great.
Slow.
Slow, okay.
Slimy.
All right.
Ugly.
Okay.
Best. Spineless.
Yeah.
A blank.
Okay. And which one of these words in here don't seem to fit?
Bird-like.
Okay, yeah. Pretty, bird-like.
Pointy.
Pointy.
Graceful. Poisonous.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna explain to you why. This is the blue dragon sea slug. This is a slug. It's beautiful. It looks like a bird. It's graceful. It floats in the water. They're very venomous. They actually eat jellyfish. And in your mind, you can't think. You have this normal thing. A slug is this. This is this. And that's how our minds are. Our minds have one picture. And to think of something broader than that, we just oftentimes don't do it because we go with the first thing. So that's, as far as creative range, this is nature's perfect example. And some of this can be found in divergent thinking. I don't know if you guys have ever seen Whose Line Is It Anyway, where they're given these random objects and they have to create something from it. Here he's pretending to be a lizard, from, I don't even know what that thing is. So divergent thinking is the ability to diverge from just the normal, hey, a slug is brown, a slug is ugly, to, hey, it's beautiful and blue and pointy, so to speak. So which one is more important? You have your range being out of the box, or you have your accuracy. And which one is more important in what situation? Is it more important to be out of the box, or is it more important to be accurate?
It depends on the consumer need. It depends on what you're trying to design.
So when would range be, being out of the box, when would that be more important?
Potentially when you have more time to test and learn and you have more time to ideate.
Okay.
When you're solving for something that has never been solved before or tackled before, I think range becomes more important.
Awesome.
Something brand new.
Yeah. And what about accuracy? When is accuracy important?
I think when you've got time, the less time you have, the more accurate you need to be.
Exactly. And part of the reason I bring up these terms is because when you're in a brainstorming session and you're evaluating ideas, the phrase out of the box makes people just kind of roll their eyes. If you say, come on, guys, we need something more out of the box, everybody's like, oh gosh, But I think having people understand, okay, we need to broaden our range here of what we're thinking. Or, okay, these ideas are very broad. We need to be more accurate with what we're trying to do here with the solution, with the ideas that we're coming up with. They're just terms that throughout, being in the creative process a lot, I've learned to rein people in or open people up using these two terms. So they're kind of things you can tuck away in your toolkit on your next brainstorming session. So now the assessment. Everybody's done the assessment. It looked like this. You found it there. We're going to get into the personalities. So these are the 5 personalities. You have your visionaries, your structurists, your enhancers, your defenders, and your promoters. And I'm going to take the next couple minutes and I'm going to give you just a broad overview of what these different personality types are like. And, you know, some of you just got the letters, but now you can see exactly what sort of creative personality type you are. So visionaries, they produce ideas making up the concept of the solution. They're broad thinkers, they're not practical, they're focused on doing something new. Welcome to my purple world. Like Prince was one of my favorite visionaries because he did everything his way, his clothes, his instruments, his music. He saw a world that didn't exist and he created it. And that's sort of what visionaries do. The problem with visionaries is that they're not really concerned with being practical. They're not concerned with budgets. They're not concerned with timelines. They're not concerned with resources. So they can be a little bit all over the place. The next is structurists. And these are the folks that once there's a broad concept out there, they are skilled at coming up with ways to get it done, how to produce the solution. They execute. They're really good with details. Can they build it? Yes, they can. Structurists can be a little bit linear, and that's where they need the next group to help them out. And these are enhancers. And enhancers, once you have the idea, once you have the structure, they make the little tweaks that make it so much better. And this is Joanna Gaines, who is an interior designer, and everything she does gets shiplap. And I love that. I think it's awesome. The next one is defenders. And these are the folks that previously get a bad rap. They're the Debbie Downers. They're the ones that are always shooting holes in a concept. And you may think, well, how the heck is that creative? How is it creative to just poo-poo on everybody's party? Well, what they're really doing is they're looking into the future and they're creating scenarios and imagining how things could fail. So that in and of itself, because you have to create a reality where this concept exists and it's being used and it's potentially going to fail. So I call them defenders because they produce ideas that preserve the concept. They recognize the threats. And for those of you that don't know, that's Mr. T from the A-Team, where most of their solutions were they would weld oil drums to their van and they'd bust in the warehouse and Mr. T would just toss people, you know, in the air, and because he would defend the whole thing while they were doing the thing. So defenders. The last one are promoters. And I love this quote. It's useless being creative unless you can sell what you create. And that's Don Draper from Mad Men. And he was the master promoter. He could get angry groups of clients to buy into his idea. And that's super important because you need to have buy-in. After you've created this concept, you've developed the structure, you've poked all the holes in it, you made enhancements. How is it going to be implemented? How is it going to be promoted to either internally or externally? And that's what these folks are great at. And one of the things you'll notice if you took the quiz is that nobody is just one thing and everything else is a flat line. Everybody's sort of kind of a mix. I mean, and you might be straight across the board. You might be, you know, whatever, mostly one and just a little bit of the other ones. But you will be a mix. Now, let me see a thumbs up, like an actual thumbs up, if you guys agree with the assessment, if it was pretty spot on to who you are. Okay, that looks like a good bit of people. All right, let me see a thumbs up if you were a little bit surprised at the results. No? Okay. That was all right. Now we're going to get into the creative process. So the whole point in knowing your personalities is so that you can imagine doing this with your team. Imagine you have to sit down with 6 or 8 people, right? And you know that Ted is a visionary and Lisa is a structurist and Barbara's a defender, so that when the creative process rolls around and they know each other's personality type, what the value that you get from knowing these personality types and understanding these personality types really shows itself when you go through this creative process. And there's 4 steps. This is sort of the tried and true creative process that's out there: preparation, incubation, illumination, and verification. So away we go. Preparation. This is where we let the structurists and the defenders take the lead. The visionary just kind of sits and doodles as visionaries do. The enhancer, shops for things on Amazon. But this is where, when you need to have someone that's going to be specific and define the problem and define the resources that are available, these are the folks that you want to have in charge: defenders and structurists. And the next step, this is one where folks don't really understand. After the problem's been defined, the resources, the timeline, all of that stuff, and that gets passed out to the team, everyone just goes back to their normal life and they let this marinate in the background. This is incubation, where you let the ideas grow. So no one's really taking the lead on this step, but everybody's jotting down ideas and making notes that they're going to bring back to the next phase. Illumination. So this is when you turn your ideas into solutions. This is when you reassess the goals to see if anything's changed from the time you first set the meeting until now. And then everyone contributes their ideas. And this is where the visionaries and the structurists can kind of play back and forth. The visionary opens it up and throws out concepts, and the structurist has ideas for how to possibly implement this. You might get a little bit of participation from the defender, but it's mostly a visionary and structurist sort of thing. And there's something called the idea space that, if anyone's really interested, you can message me and I'll tell you what that is. It's just a matrix that you use to evaluate ideas. Then validation, where you let the ideas grow. So you test the ideas in hypothetical situations and you make adjustments and enhancements. And this is where the defender and the enhancer can really do their thing. And you can, of course, still get buy-in from the structurists on how to actually make it happen once the idea has been validated. But these are the folks that you want sort of leading the charge on the validation aspect of it. So to recap, the visionaries kick things off with broad concepts. The structurists create a basic foundation. The enhancers make initial refinements. The defenders validate the solution. And the promoters forecast the effectiveness, and they help foster potential buy-in. So that's sort of how the creative roles play in the creative process. And this can be super valuable when you are sitting around with a team and everyone has a role, and it's not this person is dumping on my idea because I didn't give him his spreadsheet on time and he's still a little salty about it and blah, 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 blah. It changes people from their personalities to their roles. And I've seen that so many times in creative brainstorming situations, whether it's a branding meeting or a marketing strategy meeting or something like that. And I'm there with the client and you can just see the back and forth that goes on. And it's like, if people would stay in their lanes and they understood some sort of role, we could get a lot further along. So that is the end of part 1. The next thing that we're going to jump into is the journey, how to become more creative. So CREATIVIZE, that's a real word. I didn't make that up. And it's becoming more creative by adopting a creative mindset and lifestyle. Remember at the beginning, I talked about there's your gifts that you're born with, there's your skill set and tools, and then there's your mindset. And this is more on a personal level where you just decide, you know what, I'm just going to be an overall creative person. It's going to affect my business and it's going to affect my life. So think of someone you would consider to be creative, and you guys chime in here. What words would you use to describe creative people?
Imaginative.
Okay.
Problem solver.
All right.
Critical thinkers.
Okay. What about their personalities?
Exploratory.
Okay.
Disorganized.
True that.
Curious.
Curious, yep.
Bipolar.
Yep.
Inclusive.
Okay. All right. These two are two of the most creative people I know. These are my sons. They are tall, they have lots of hair, and they're very creative. And I would describe them both as playful, smart, artistic. They're both thinkers. They're both on the rebellious side. They're very curious about everything. And they're both pretty energetic. But in a business sense, you can think about other forms of creativity as someone who's strategic, someone who's able to develop strategy, someone who's critical in the sense that they can discern between different things. They can look at different aspects of a thing and pick it apart. Systematic, someone who's good at developing systems, or someone who's insightful. And then one of my favorites, someone who's motivational, who can look at a different person and figure out what exactly they need to say to each person to help motivate them. So in a business sense, like, these are the forms of creativity that are really beneficial to a business. So now we're going to go through 3 steps to give you unlimited creativity. Creativity just out of this world, amazing creativity. The first step is open up. What happens to us as we get older is that our minds just get tighter and tighter and tighter and tighter. And we get, have you heard this phrase, we get set in our ways, right? And the reason is because we have this thing called a semiotic matrix. And it looks like a pair of these, I call them Kanye glasses. I don't know what the real term is, but we see everything through our age, our race, our income, our religion, basically our identity. So to see anything outside of who we are is really, really hard. We have a hard time playing pretend because we're so set in our ways. We have a very tight semiotic matrix. The downside is that really messes up your creativity because you can't see anything except for who you are. So on one side, you see a tight-minded person, and on the other side, you see a creative-minded person who's able to step outside themselves and be creative in a more neutral way. We're going to do some case studies. So here's Annie. Annie hates country music. Her boyfriend Jared has taken her to a Brad Paisley concert because it's his birthday. So these are the things Annie likes. She likes fried chicken, America, pickup trucks, light beer, mama, fishing, and cowboy boots. Holy smokes, she's going to love this concert, right? But she just hates twangy music and cowboy hats. Unfortunately, Annie said the concert was awful. Brad Paisley and a lot of the concert goers had on cowboy hats. 2 of the songs were really twangy, so she broke up with Jared on the way home. That was Annie's experience. Now look at Mark. Mark is going to his first comic book convention with his 12-year-old son, Steve. Mark likes classic literature, fitness, 80s music, who doesn't, photography, and politics. He hates cartoons and costumes, and he doesn't really like drama. But Mark didn't get into the costumes and the spontaneous play fighting, but he appreciated the stories, the attention to anatomy, the unique angles and perspectives of the drawings. He had a great time. What was the difference between the 2 case studies?
The reason why they were there in the first place. One went with his son and was looking to share that experience with his son. And the other was with a boyfriend that apparently wasn't that great a match if she was giving him up after one concert.
Is it the mindset, Art? The difference was the mindset, open, that you call tight, tight versus open-minded?
Yeah.
The second found the good, even though he didn't like where he was going. He could find something to appreciate.
Right. Right. That's exactly it.
To focus on.
That's totally it. I think when we go into any sort of situation and the thing that we're focused on is what we don't like. Well, I don't like this and I don't like that, rather than say, hey, I'm not really a big fan of this, but I like that and I like this. It would be the same as if someone invited me to a death metal concert. Not really into death metal, don't really get into the singing, but I do like great drummers. So the singing might turn me off, all the eyeliner and the weird clothes might be a little, off-putting, but I'd love watching the drummers play because I think that would be awesome. So it's having that mindset to think, okay, what can I pull out of this? What can I use for this next part here? Has anyone heard this quote? The greater your island of knowledge, the broader your shoreline of creativity. It's the more you know and the more you experience that helps you be more creative, because the mind pulls memories and experiences and knowledge and melds them together to produce a new hypothetical reality, an idea, or a solution. So if you've not really experienced much, either personally or professionally, you won't be able to have that broad shoreline of creativity. That's why it's always so good to open yourself up to new opportunities, new ideas, new experiences, things like that. Even if at first it sounds like something you really wouldn't be into. And here's a graphical depiction of how your island of knowledge and your semiotic matrix work together. So, has there ever been something that you might want to experience, or you're mildly interested in experiencing, that you might experience this weekend? Anyone?
Different restaurant, different food group.
Different food group. What's something that you thought you would never go see that maybe after hearing this, you might give a second look at?
The opera.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. So I did something a couple weeks ago. Me and the marketing analyst here were having a little one-on-one time, and I thought, you know what? Let's go rock climbing. And the problem with that is I'm afraid of heights. You get me anything past 6 feet and I'm just like, oh, you know. So rock climbing was not going to be something that I wanted to do. But we went to the Whitewater Center. We have the U.S. National Whitewater Center, and they have a rock wall that goes up, and it's a free solo wall that's underneath it is a 20-foot pool. So if you fall in the water. There's no harnesses, there's no anything and whatever. So I went with Michael, and we went to the rock wall, and sure enough, I got about 6 feet up, and I could feel myself freezing. But at the same time, I just kind of, I pushed through it, and I went up a couple more steps, and I think I probably climbed 20 feet maybe at the most. And it wasn't as scary as I thought. And it was actually kind of fun to let go and drop down into the pool. So I had fun. I'm thinking, I'm not doing rock climbing because it's kind of scary, but that was actually enjoyable. I would go again. So how is that going to make me more creative? It's going to keep my mind open and keep my mind flexible. And that plays out when we talk about the next step, dream up. So there's reality, right? We live in reality, complete with life, death, and gravity. This is me, my mom, and my sister doing as we do, tequila shots on the porch. I'm 51 years old. I do marketing for money. I'm 6 feet tall with freckles, and I love my mom and my sister. That is my reality, right? In fantasy, it's whatever you dream up. It's freedom from all physical, mental, and moral rules. Who knows what this is from? Avatar, right? Unless you just got to this planet. This is Avatar, one of my favorite movies. And it's just one of the most creative movies. Who would think mountains should float and people ride on dragons and they got carbon fiber in their bones? It is so creative. And I think we spend so much time living in reality and not enough time in fantasy that our minds become tight, because the brain uses the space that's active when we're not concentrating, called the anterior medial brain areas. It's the one that we use when we daydream. And I think letting ourselves have our minds open up like that, it allows it's like building creative muscles, instead of just always being focused on reality, doing things that allow us to be focused on the fantasy world makes you more creative. And that's seen in the law of WTF. I made that up. It's the law of what the flip. So every time your brain sees something new, it struggles to make connections with things that you already know. It wants to categorize it. It wants to put it away nice and neat. And this exercise of your brain scrambling to understand something that it's never seen before, that is like doing squats for your creativity. That is doing powerlifting for your creativity. And as we get older, though, we kind of do the same thing all the time, right? We go to the same places. We might venture out a little bit, but we don't do things completely different. But exposing yourself to things that you don't know or you don't understand is really super beneficial into helping make you more creative. The last step, lighten up. How many people have kept their mouth shut in a meeting because you didn't want to seem wrong? I've definitely done it. And that's where you can have this fear of being wrong or being embarrassed or sounding not like you're not smart. You just need to lighten up. You just need to know that it's okay. It's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to go down the wrong path and then turn back around. Get over the fear of being wrong. I love the scene in The Matrix where Neo sees a little kid and he has the spoon. And the little kid just breaks it down to him and says, the truth is there is no spoon. And in creativity, there are no dumb questions. There are no dumb ideas. There's no failure. It's all part of a process, right? So to improve your creative vision, step 1, open up. Step 2, dream up. And step 3, lighten up. The bonus step, care up. I'd say most of the time in our jobs, we're not solving problems for ourselves. We're not trying to figure out a new activity or a new shirt or a new relationship. We're trying to solve something for the people that work with us. We're trying to solve something for our customers. This is where the power of empathy and being able to step outside yourself, remove your matrix, right? And understand the customer's problems from their emotional standpoint, not just their nuts and bolts or financial standpoint. That's where creativity really can shine, because you're more in touch on an emotional level with the people it is that you're doing business with. Believe it or not, folks, you are all more creative. And I think you should give yourself a round of applause. I'm so impressed with all of you and how you've made this leap forward with your creativity. So thank you. To recap, I have some recap slides. I have some more information if you guys would like it. I also have some jumpstart drills. So sometimes when you get into a brainstorming session, there's the rhyme game. This is hilarious. When you see people who don't normally try to rhyme, I'm telling you, no one is tense and uptight after this one. This one is really good. The story chain, where you start a random story and the next person has to continue the chain. And these are great. These are little quick 5-minute, 10-minute, whatever type of drills that you can do to sort of loosen up before a brainstorming session. And here we go. And the divergent game, pick up some everyday objects and try to see what are different things that you could do to like, what could this also be used for? This one's a little bit trickier, but it's also pretty fun. And it's a fun party game where it's sort of like that divergent game where he had the thing and he made himself a lizard. So these are some jumpstart drills that I have. I can send you an overview if anyone's interested with the jumpstart drills and with the recap, so that you can pass this along to your teams. And also the creative survey is open. It's not a closed survey. So if you would like to take this back and have folks in your company do it, please be my guest. If you want to email me and let me know the results, or if you want to let me know if it made a difference to your teams, I'd be more than happy to get that feedback. So right now I'm going to open it up to questions. If you have any questions about the personality types or the creative process or CREATIVIZE itself, let me know.
You want to stop sharing, Art, and you can bring everybody back on the screen and Dee can take over?
Gotcha.
So thank you, Art. That was a great presentation. I appreciate it. And so while you were talking, I asked the question for people to share what their top 2 personality types were. And because I was curious if COOs had similar personality types, and that's sort of what drives them into the roles that they've selected. And so we had lots of visionaries, enhancers, promoters, lots of combinations of visionary promoter. There were, gosh, 6 or 8 people who had that combination of skills. And then we had a couple of people that fell outside of that. One that was predominantly a visionary, another one that was a visionary enhancer, and then defender was one person's. Anthony was a defender, was his highest, and the promoter was his lowest, and everything else is pretty much flat. So it was kind of interesting to see what everybody's personality types were reported as. So thanks to all of you who shared. Do you guys have any questions for Art relative to how he utilizes this information inside our company, or how this might work for you and your company? How is it relevant to the work that you do today?
Art, question here, Chuck Roskowski. So what are your thoughts? I hear oftentimes that in group brainstorming sessions, sometimes people kind of sit back and they don't participate. And there's a lot of, thought around brainstorming independently. And that allows people that maybe aren't as outgoing to really think through a problem, in some solitude, and allows them to participate. What's been your experience with, group brainstorming sessions versus, kind of taking a problem back to your work area and then coming back to the group with ideas? Have you done both successfully? Obviously, you've done a group session successfully, but what about the other?
Part of the creative process is the incubation phase, where people go off and they sort of come up with their ideas, and then they have to present them. And Chuck, I think the biggest problem is that sometimes people have ideas, but they don't present them. They hear all these other great ideas coming in, and they think, oh man, my ideas are stupid, I'm not saying anything, and they just don't have that sort of confidence. I think one of the best things about people understanding their creative personalities is to understand that a good idea isn't this broad vision all the time. It isn't this blockbuster innovative thing. You could be an enhancer that just says this one little small tweak, and that makes all the difference. So I think when people understand these personality types, and people looking across the table, they see Betsy, and Betsy just seems to have critiques. Well, Betsy's a defender. We all know that. That's sort of her strength, is to find areas where there might be holes. And we don't get mad at her. She's not killing our vibe. She's just staying within her personality type. So I think there's confidence that comes from using this format that allows people to feel like, okay, I'm not going to come up with the great vision. I'm not going to come up with how to, but I can give you a couple pitfalls that I see right off the bat, and they also know that I can't do too much of that, because we still need to let things flow. Like there's a time for me to try to validate the ideas, but maybe it's not up front. So there's a format and there's an identity, and they all play together. So I think this really helps people.
So identifying the personalities allows people to, I guess, maybe better understand their role or how they can participate. Maybe they're a defender and they don't want to sound negative, but if that personality type is acknowledged up front, if you do that with a creative team that you want to put together, and they kind of understand what their core personality types are in this process, that might help open them up. Yeah, I see that. Okay. All right.
And everybody's equally valuable.
Right.
A visionary can spout stuff all day, but without a structurist, nothing ever happens.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Great. Thank you.
Sure.
Do you create work groups based on the personalities so that you don't end up with 5 visionaries and 1 enhancer?
You could do that if you really wanted to get nothing done. But yeah, I mean, I think that's a perfect example. Sometimes you can have these meetings that are a department. It might be a department of structurists, because maybe their particular job function sort of leans towards that sort of personality type. And you might have to get somebody who's not even in that department, who's more of a visionary, to sort of kick things off, right? So that's great. You can sort of pick teams based on their creative strengths and just add some folks in. And even that outside perspective, along with that different personality type, can really make a big difference.
For me, I think one of the things that I learned the first time I went through this, and then when we had meetings afterwards, I learned when to be quiet. Because as a leader inside the company, if something is not happening, you often feel like you need to step up and fill the gap. But when you know and understand the personality types that are in the room, you can call upon and encourage the people who have the right personality for whatever step in the creative process you're in, and encourage them to participate and play their role, instead of filling into that area where it's not your particular strength. So it was really helpful to me to know when I just needed to be quiet and let other people play their role. Any other questions?
I don't know if this is I don't know if this is a question or a statement, but our leadership team, we get in meetings and we talk about problems and ideas and stuff like that. And what ends up happening to us a lot is we have like a lot of great ideas, but then we don't get to a final resolution, and then we have to come back to it. We have to come back to it. And you said that this survey is open, right? Like I could send this to on the lead. Because I'm curious to see if we have like multiple of the same on our leadership team, and maybe that's why we're struggling when it comes to these situations.
That's a very good possibility that you are missing some of the other key personality types that can move the ideas along the process. I think Sue hit it on the head. If you get a room full of visionaries, they will come up with all kinds of great, amazing stuff, and no one knows how to get it done, or they might have some sort of idea, but they don't have the defenders there to poke holes in it and make it even rational. So yeah, it could be just that lack of a balance in your creative team. So yeah, have everybody take the survey and then look and let me know. Reach out to me, let me know if you're all pretty similar.
I'm laughing at this because I know two pretty certain. I know obviously I'm more of a defender, and I know my CEO is like way out there as a visionary. Like he's he's way out there. There's two other people on the leadership team that I'm curious about, and I'm wondering maybe we get caught up because maybe those two are more similar to him, or I don't really see them as defenders. But seeing this was definitely helpful for me because it's helping me open my mind about some of the stuff that we have going on. Of course, me being the way I am, I'm thinking of it, and I'm obviously thinking of the problems, and I'm like, why is this happening to us? So yeah, I appreciate that.
Okay, good.
Going back to that scenario. So if you have a leadership team that has got a defender, a visionary, and two other people, let's just say that they're visionaries, how would you interject diversity into that team without hiring someone else? Could you bring in a facilitator? How would you balance that group out to get that conversation going?
Well, I mean, depending on the situation that you're trying to solve for, if it's not, top level stuff that other folks can't know, and you knew there was somebody in your maybe management team or other parts of the company that was an enhancer and someone that was a good structurist, you had the whole company take it, you might have them sit in. You might just say, hey, we need you, we need your buy-in on this. And everybody would be on board and understand what their roles are. And if you needed to have like little cards in front of you with everybody's roles, just so people don't forget, then I think that's one way you could solve it. Or you could, if you know the function of each of the roles, you could have people sort of try to step outside themselves and say, okay, we've got this broad concept. We've got the structure down because, Bob over here is a structurist. We just need to tweak it. Now we're going to all try to be enhancers. We're all going to try to make tweaks. We're not going to shoot holes in it. We're not going to come up with more visions. We're not going to come up with more structure or try to promote it. We're just going to make enhancements at this point. So you can sort of adopt other personalities if you can.
Art, is there potentially another role that we need to be thinking about in today's remote world, right? Where we're not all up in the same room doing brainstorming and sort of collaboratively inspiring one another creatively. Is there a responsibility now for someone to kind of drive the creative process in consideration of the fact that we're typically looking at a little dot on the computer screen versus sitting in the same room, sharing pizza and throwing stickies up on a board. Right. Like a moderator. Is that what you mean, Chris? Not necessarily a moderator, maybe more of a coach, inspirational leader, someone who has both the ability to kind of maintain the momentum of the creative process, but equally kind of knows how to kind of get everybody involved. Yeah. That is that would be a person that you might have to identify internally, or like I've done that as a creative director in my own agency. You know, when I'm sitting down with the clients and we've done the work and we're presenting it to them and then they're sort of hashing it out, I've been the sort of moderator in the middle, you know? So it is good to have one person whose whole job is to just sort of moderate. But I don't know if that's necessarily a specific personality. I think that's just a person that sort of steps outside the process and just has the role of managing it. And I totally agree with what you're saying, because it's different when you're on Zoom and as opposed to when you're kind of feeding off of each other's energy and body language, and you do have a common whiteboard or something like that. So maybe, hey, maybe you just came up with a business, you know? creativemoderators.com. I don't know, something. Well, just as a follow-up, I mean, if you look back on the last 18 months, it looks like you're in an office. I don't know if you're in an office or in your home office. Yeah. But I work in the creative business, right? My sense is that the spark, the passion, the exuberance that typically comes from the creative process has been missing to a large degree over the last 20 months. Work's still getting done. Yeah. Still being creative, but the magic has been tempered a little bit by our physical distance. Mm-hmm. Are there things that you're doing in your organization, or the things that you're thinking about in relation to this need to bring back sort of the magical power of creativity? Yeah, I mean, because of what we do, we never stopped coming into the office. You know, I was the only car on the road sometimes. It was kind of spooky. But I've felt it myself with doing meetings with folks that were outside the office. And I think it's just a paradigm shift. I think just the way we do business is shifting. And when we find that we're sort of deficient in that collective creative energy, we just have to find other ways to generate it. And I think things like some of those drills, you know, we can hop on Zoom and just jump straight into it, right? And people talk all the time about Zoom fatigue. You just get tired of having all these Zoom meetings and Teams meetings or whatever. And I think inserting a little bit of that, hey, we're all humans, we're all people, the same stuff that you would do if you would go into a conference room and you kind of goof around for 5 or 10 minutes before the meeting got started. We don't do that as much. It's sort of stiff when you get on Zoom, right? I think we just have to be more creative and more human in how we kind of warm up to each other when we get in these virtual environments. That's the only solution I can really come up with.
All right, I think I have another question, or this is definitely a question. How much of scenarios and situations do you think play into do you think it does play a big part in how people end up turning out as far as what personality they are? Just before you answer, speaking on myself, I feel as though I kind of was put in that position based on my CEO being such a visionary. Like a lot of this stuff, like he was out doing all business development and everything else was coming into me. So I almost feel as though I got morphed into that. So I just want to ask, like, do you think situations and scenarios play a part? Or you think it's just, I mean, I think naturally I am more that than anything else, but I feel like I definitely was pushed into that direction. Yeah.
I think if you were pushed into that and you thrive in that sort of role, it's because that's how you are. And I think being put into that sort of brought that out in you, because if you were put into that and you were a visionary as well, I don't think you would thrive, because those two are almost polar opposites. Visionaries and defenders. Defenders roll their eyes when the visionaries talk, and the visionaries hate defenders because they're always shooting holes and stuff. So I would have to believe that it just sort of brought to light what you already were.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I was just sitting there thinking about it, and I was just curious what your thoughts were on it. So thank you.
Sure, absolutely. Anyone else? This is great. I love this discussion.
Hey, Kayla, I noticed that you said you do design sprints and other innovative work with your clients. Would you mind just sharing with the group a little bit about what that looks like for you?
Sure. So we operate using a framework actually from a book called Sprint. So definitely worth checking that out. What we'll do with different organizations, large and small, is identify a specific business problem that they want to focus on. We'll go in and we'll facilitate a design sprint. And of course, in the past, we would do it in person because of all the magic that you all are alluding to, but we've adapted it to be virtual. And we set it up so each day you're doing a different part of the innovation or creative process. Ending in actually having some prototypes that you're testing with quote customers at the end, so you sort of get to make a decision. And because we do it in a rapid fire with a lot of this sort of facilitated brainstorming and ideation, you're able to get some results pretty quickly. And you know, I love facilitating them and being able to see people who think they're not creative actually have parameters that empower them to do so and see the impact of their work.
Great, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, sure thing. Feel free to reach out if anyone is curious to learn more. Thanks, Dee.
All right, well, if there are no more questions for Art or comments on the presentation, then we have about 15 minutes left. So if you have business issues that you'd like to put into the chat, then certainly we can begin to address those issues. Anybody have anything they want to add to the discussion today? Okay, so I don't see anything. As Art shared, this quiz is open right now as he gathers more information and data to perfect his quiz. Please feel free to share it because the more information he gathers, the better he can make the assessment for others. And so thanks for all of you who took the quiz today, and please feel free to share it as much as you can. And if you have any questions, I know that Laura will send out Art's contact information. I know he would love to hear any results that come from you applying that quiz in your particular environment. So please do that. And